Hello, everybody. This is Shannon LaBruyere, and I welcome you to Sunday Night Live, where I am alive and loving it, kicking off a great week ahead. Starting out strong on Sunday night sets us up for success on Monday, and I'm so excited for you to join me in my quest to thrive in change. Tonight we're going to be talking about something pretty amazing. Hi Tanya, welcome. And yep, we've got Tanya and Tanya, awesome. We're going to talk a little bit about margins, and I don't know if you know what margins are, but we'll explore that idea a little bit as we go on. But before we get started on it, I just want to let you know that daylight savings time is alive and well here in Michigan. I'm not sure if you are located in Michigan or not, but if you are, you know that we had to spring our clocks ahead this morning at 2 a.m. And as a consequence, a lot of us were late for church. Not me, I did it right. But that time change really throws us off. So if you are not in the Eastern Daylight Time Zone, or if you don't do daylight savings time, you might be tuning into this and finding out that you are an hour late. So we will see how many people chime in and say, I missed it, I can't believe I was off. William, thanks for being here. Bobby, I'm glad you're here. So glad you guys have jumped on. Earlier today, I was with the Apostolic Church of Flat Rock here in Michigan and helping some of their folks grow in their leadership. And we had such a great time of talking together, sharing with each other some of the lessons we learned from last month's episode or last month's edition of leadership training. And we talked a lot about the 5 levels of leadership. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 5 levels of leadership that John Maxwell talks about, but it's a really powerful way to assess quickly where you're at in the leadership scale, how you're influencing people. But it also gives you something to strive for and work toward. And so we talked a lot about that, and it was really great. So I want to thank the folks there at the Apostolic Church of Flat Rock for being great leaders, for leaning in and wanting to grow and get better. It was a great day. Next week will be our 4th session and our final session, or not next week, next month will be our 4th and final session, and they'll get certificates for having finished the program, if you will, and we'll celebrate the growth. It'll be just a great time. So anyways, I'm glad you're joining me. Glad to get started now on our topic about margins. Wayne, Carol, glad to have you. Mwah, everybody. And it's time to get started. So I've been thinking a lot about margins lately because I wasn't allowing myself any. So I don't know if you know what a margin is, but I picture the margins on a paper. Remember when we were in school, you've got the lined paper, and down along one side you've got the little red line, and then that's where the holes are, and that's the margin. And so if you were like me, you would take all of your notes on the main part of the paper and write down dutifully, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, got that. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth to this continent, which is the Gettysburg Address. Got it. Write down all that important stuff on that main part of the paper. But all the fun stuff, if you were like me, all the fun stuff was happening over there in the margins. And in the margins of the paper, that's where I did all of my doodling. How many of you are doodlers? Are you like me, that margin part, the part off to the side wasn't big enough to take notes, but it was a perfect place to draw flowers all on the sides of those little holes to make all the holes into flowers. You could also make those holes into butterflies if you were like me. I did a lot of drawing of bunny rabbits. I liked making their ears and different types of teeth, and anyway, you get the picture. Lots of doodling happening over there on the margin of my paper. So when I was in college, I sat in the front row of my Western civilization class, sat in the front row so that I wouldn't be distracted, because I'm easily distracted. As any of my teachers would tell you, I was easily distracted. So I would sit in the front row and I would take notes on whatever the professor was talking about. And then what I discovered was, for me, as I was listening to the professor, I would write down just one word of what he said. Say, for example, Columbus. And I'd write that down. And then I'd go back to listening, but drawing all these clever pictures and curlicues all over my paper. And what I ended up with at the end of every session was about 5 sentences of solid notes and a whole paper full of margin. And for me, I learned more by taking notes that way than I did trying to focus every little bit of effort to capture every word that the professor was saying. I don't know if any of you have experienced anything like that. I found that if I was able to just keep a little bit of my brain distracted by making those flowers and curlicues and writing down, Merry Christmas a million times, which I did, I was able to more easily absorb the information they were telling me. How many of you had one of those fidget spinners? They were the biggest thing a while back. Give me a thumbs up if you had one of those fidget spinners. You could get them at the drugstore. They were $5 or less. And basically, they just allowed you to move your fingers and fuss with this little device that whirled around with very little effort. But it was just enough, keeping your fingers occupied, it was just enough to allow you to concentrate on whatever was happening. That's margin, a psychological version of margin. Margins are super important for us to have. We can't have every second of our day or every spare piece of brain power crammed in so tight that nothing else can fit in. Because when we start cramming everything in, we get ourselves boxed up and tight, and then we can't move, right? We can't move, we can't think, we have trouble breathing even because it's so tight. So if we know we like a little bit of breathing room, right? You don't like the turtleneck that's too high up, you want a little bit of space there. If we know we need a little bit of room to be our best, to be our most comfortable, to be able to absorb information, what prevents us from doing it? And so I'm going to talk tonight about 3 things, and they're not exclusive. There are more than these 3, but these are the 3 main ones. And so what I'm going to talk tonight about the 3 main ways that we eliminate margins from our lives, why we don't do it, even though we know we should. These are the 3 ways that we tend to limit ourselves with the margins. So the first one is this: we don't make it a priority. The second one is we allow other people's agendas to encroach on ours. And the third one is guilt. So those are the 3 things we're going to talk about. How we don't have margins because we don't make it a priority, because we let other people's agendas take over our own, and because we feel guilty about having margins. Are you with me? Okay, so let's get started. For the last few months, actually, probably 2 months at least, I have been having a dilemma. I have a YouTube channel that all of these Sunday Night Live videos are being posted on. So the premise is this: so instead of somebody going to my Facebook page and having to scroll down through weeks and weeks to try and find the Sunday Night Live that they want to watch, it's posted on a YouTube channel so that it's very easy to go in there and do a quick search for a tag, and boom, you can get the Sunday Night Live where I talked about getting unstuck, or boom, you can get the Sunday Night Live where I talked about how to be an encourager. So it's a great way to make this content material available to people who want to know, who want to see it, or who want to share it with others. So having a YouTube channel is a great thing. And I've been really excited about it because all of these videos are being posted there. And just so you know, I'll be posting a link in this Facebook Live post. If you wanted to go to YouTube and subscribe to that video, that would be awesome. It would let you know when a new video gets posted. But when I get 100 subscribers, it allows me to rename it to something that makes sense. Instead of it being YXZ asterisk gibberish 123, I'll be able to call it Shannon LaBruyere, Thrive and Change, which will make it even easier to find. But that's an aside. Anyway, I've got this YouTube channel and it's solid, it's going. There's like 19 videos there now if you wanted to go check it out. The problem is that a couple of years ago, I started a YouTube channel so that I could practice learning how to speak better. And so I had to make it public so that the people who were helping me speak at the John Maxwell team, my mentor, Roddy Galbraith, he needed to be able to see it. I made it public. So he would go to YouTube and he would watch my video and he would say, Shannon, this is how you could improve. So it was a great process, except it was practice. And so it didn't look great. And I didn't always worry about if, my hair was okay. And it wasn't. Didn't always worry if the light was good. They just weren't great. And they were practice. But anytime anybody went to YouTube and searched my name, those were the videos that showed up. So I've got this legacy of practice videos haunting me, and then I've got this great YouTube channel that is really going to be helpful. And I can't advertise that great YouTube channel until I get rid of those not so great videos. And I have been trying for over 2 months to remember the email address that I used to start that YouTube channel. It is not an easy thing to get rid of a YouTube channel, my friends, and I could not remember for the life of me what email I used. So for the past 2 months, I have been getting more and more frantic about that doggone channel. I need to get that old one gone. And I've been putting pressure on myself. Shannon, you're not going to be able to publicize your new one until the old one's gone. You've got to remember. You've got to remember. And I started squeezing margin out of that process. I was getting more and more intense. I would sit down at the computer for hours at a time and just randomly type in the things that I thought might be the email address, and it wasn't working. Sylvia says I sound like her. I don't doubt it, Sylvia. I was getting so frantic about this, and instead of taking a step back, I was leaning in harder. How many of you do that? When something's not working, you push in harder, you double down, you work it, you scrunch your eyes, you are serious. And how often does it actually bring results? Not very often. Anyway, so finally this past week, I was trying to come up with that YouTube address, trying to figure out how I could get into that channel, getting more and more frustrated, and then I realized, hold on, I need to step back from this. I need to Jackie says she does. Yes. We need to step back. Don't force in. Step back. Create some space. So I created some space between me and that elusive YouTube email that I'd signed up over 2 years ago. It was probably more like 3. Gave it a little bit of room. I actually gave myself permission to not think about it. I just said to myself out loud, Shannon, what is that YouTube address that you used to sign up back when you were practicing speaking? And I left it at that. Every once in a while over the next couple of days, I would revisit it. I'd write it down on a piece of paper. What was that email address? Because folks, the answer was in there. The answer is always in here. We just squeeze out everything so that it has no room to filter up to the surface. I'm not talking about trying to remember email addresses either. I'm talking about all kinds of things in life where we work so hard to figure it out that we choke out any opportunity for it to kind of wiggle its way into our awareness. So finally, I think it was last Sunday afternoon, I got a massage, which was wonderful. Thank you, Linda. I got a massage, and at the tail end of my massage, that email address popped into my brain. I have been trying to think of it for months. And when did it happen? When I backed away and gave it room to float to the top. Margins matter. It's not just with things we're trying to remember. It's with our relationships. They need a little breathing room, right? You can't just choke the air out of your relationships, spend every waking minute with people. It needs some room, right? It needs some room to grow. How about flowers? Flowers that are growing and their roots get so compacted that they can't even get any nutrients anymore because they're so root bound. They need some air, right? They need some margins. So margins are absolutely critical, and we're going to address the 3 reasons why we don't get them. Okay, first one is we don't make it a priority. You've heard me say this. I believe it with my whole heart. Belief drives behavior. We say that it's important to work smarter, not harder, but we don't believe it. What we really believe is that we need to work just as hard as the person who's exhausted next to us. So if they're working 5 hours a day trying to fix something, we're going to work 6, right? Sylvia, I think a great idea to solve all your problems is to get a massage and give yourself some margin, and it's going to let some of those ideas pop up. So absolutely a great idea. Take the idea that you are competing with other people for hard work and just set it off to the side. You don't have to be attached to that idea that work is a competition. And I don't mean just work like physical labor going into work. I mean effort. Sometimes we think that if we're exhausted and we're at the end of our rope, it somehow earns us magically a prize. But it doesn't. What I used to say all the time when I was coaching people within the organization that I worked, I would say to them, you don't get compensated for being exhausted, for being at the end of your rope, or for being at your wit's end. You get compensated for results. And that's the case everywhere, anywhere we are. If we're going to get a reward, it's going to be because we actually accomplished something, not because we worked so hard that we fell into a heap. Hard work alone isn't enough. So we say work smarter, not harder, and then we double down and we work harder. And so becoming aware of that, when we notice that we are working harder, not smarter, we can take a step back from that and say, hold on a second. I need to get a little bit of margin here. I need to give this situation a little bit of space. Be alert when you feel yourself getting exhausted, at the end of your rope, getting frustrated, and intentionally take a deep breath, let it out, and step back. You've heard people say that about getting angry. Count to 10 before you say anything. What is that doing? Creating margin. It's creating some room. Let's get a little room here so things don't feel so pressurized. Working smarter, not harder, doesn't mean that accomplishing goals or striving for your dreams or living out your purpose is easy and a piece of cake and doesn't require hard work. What I'm talking about is when we start working hard for the sake of working hard. We're just going through the motions, even though it's not getting us anywhere, and it's exhausting us. Like me, for hours at the computer trying to find that YouTube password. I wasn't getting any closer to the solution. I didn't even think I was getting closer to the solution, but doggone it, I was going to get that solution. I doubled down on something that wasn't going to help. Take a deep breath, step back, and be aware when you feel that tightness, that double down, irritated anger. It's time to make sure you get some margin. It's going to help. It's going to help. Amen, says Carol. All right, the next thing is we allow other people's agendas to supersede our own. You have an agenda. At least I hope you have an agenda. You've got something that you want to accomplish. It's Sunday night. After we're done with our Sunday Night Live, I'm going to write down all of the things that I want to accomplish for the rest of the week. I have an agenda. I hope you have an agenda, something you want to accomplish, something you want to do. The problem is there are quite a few people out there whose whole agenda involves getting on yours. All they care about is making sure that you are roped in to everything that they are doing. A lot of times these people are looking for volunteers for things that are worthy and valuable. It doesn't mean that their project is terrible. It just means it's most important to them. And we tend as humans to behave in a way that aligns with what we think is most important. And so if I'm choosing to do this, it must be just as important for my husband Ken as it is for me. And I used to think that until he finally pulled me aside and said, Shannon, if you volunteered to help out at another dinner, do not volunteer me to do it with you. Just speak for yourself. I had been trying to take over his agenda. And we let people do that. And when we let people take over our agenda with theirs, what happens to our margins? They're gone. Our margins evaporate because they have no reason. Hi, Pam. Yay. They have no reason to preserve somebody else's margin. They just don't. So who's in charge of preserving my margins? You're looking at her. It's me. I'm the one in charge. As I was writing down my notes for this session, I had actually written down that, how did I put it? I said something on the order of other people take over our agendas. And that's not true. They don't take over our agendas. We hand them to them because we can't say no. We can't say no. And when we can't say no, or we can't say, I'll think about it, we give all of our power and our schedule over to other people. We have to take ownership for saying no. If you don't have a calendar, I recommend that you get one. If this is the only reason you get it, I think you're going to think it's worth every penny. Get a calendar and schedule your downtime on that calendar. Set aside a time when you know it's likely. I'm going to be able to have some time to myself between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night. Write it on your calendar. If you decide that Monday afternoons is perfect, that it works great with all of your other items, that you're going to set aside a Monday afternoon to sit down and knit for 2 hours or read a book for 2 hours, if you decide to do that, write it on the calendar. And this is why. Because then when somebody tries to take your agenda and make it theirs, you can honestly say, I have something scheduled at that time. I won't be able to help you. It's true. And what you have scheduled, that time for yourself, your massage or your knitting time or your reading time or your racquetball time or your swim time, whatever it is that represents downtime and margin for you, when it's on your calendar, that is every bit as legitimate as any other obligation you have, because we can't function without the downtime. We just can't. So get a calendar and schedule your downtime. That way, when people try to take your agenda, take your calendar, you can honestly say to them, I'm sorry, I'm not available. After you do that a few times, you'll get to where you don't even need your calendar to say, oh my gosh, that sounds like an awesome opportunity. I hope you guys have a great time. That's protecting your margins. I know I need space, and I might need more margin than the person next to me. That's okay. You know you, but you have to have permission to preserve your margins. So let's see what Sylvia has to say about margins. I love my calendar and I'm not afraid to say no, but I'm flexible if the offer is good enough. Exactly right. You are in control of your calendar. Your calendar is not the boss of you. And so it's your friend. It helps you preserve the things that are important to you. Make sure your priorities are in a place that they'll actually get attention. They're not just an afterthought all the time. And then if something else happens that you think, you know what, that would be valuable, it's worth that exchange of time for me, you can do it because your calendar is yours. So I love that idea, Sylvia. Keep the flexibility. So use a calendar. The antidote to other people assuming your agenda is theirs and you allowing it is for you to schedule your own downtime so that they aren't encroaching on it. All right. The last thing we're going to talk about is we feel guilty when we aren't being productive. This one's tough because we are programmed to think that being busy is what matters. That always being in the mode, always being on, always being ready to do it, ready to jump in, ready to accomplish stuff. We are programmed to think that that's what's important. So Jackie, your calendar is full of your kids' stuff. So the question I would ask for you, and you're the only one who can answer this question, is it on your calendar because your kids want it, or is it on your calendar because you do? Because it's your calendar. and you fill your calendar based on what's important to you. And I have no doubt, Jackie, because I know what kind of a parent you are, I have no doubt that you are looking at your children and saying the activities that we have going are valuable for my kids. But if they don't allow for margin for you or margin for them, then perhaps you'd want to look at that and say, how do I tweak that? How do I move back from it? You get to decide how. But having kids who are involved in activities is absolutely a challenge for every parent out there, but it's something that we all take ownership of. If the activities that my kids are in are valuable and worth it, then it's worth the sacrifice and it's a priority. And if it's not, then it's up to us as parents to say, I'm going to take a step back. Even when our kids are in front of us all the time, when they are our most important priority, and I'm so glad you brought that up, Jackie, I'm so glad. Even though our kids, when we're parents with young kids, even though our kids take a huge amount of our time, we cannot allow them to take all of it because we matter too. We need margins. We need margins so that we are sane and calm and nice when we deal with our children. I don't know about you, but as a parent, when I got pushed up against the wall and I had no margin and I was working and not getting enough sleep and then running my kids all around and doing homework and making dinner and on and on and on it went, I started not being very nice. I needed margins. And so I had to look at that and say, where can I pull back? And I found places. They didn't take away from my kids, that they actually allowed me to be more connected with my kids because I was in a better place psychologically. All right, so the last thing we're talking about, which really does tie in with the kids, doesn't it, is feeling guilty about having margin in our lives. And I just want to let you know this, first of all. You have to have margin for you to be your best person. Years ago, I had never built a campfire before, or I'd never built a campfire before, and we had just got our cottage, and so I'm out there trying to build a fire, and so I get a bunch of sticks, and I stack them all very neatly, and then I got some logs, and I stacked them on the logs, and then I knew that you're supposed to use newspaper, so I got some newspaper, and I crumbled it up, made it into all these really tight balls, and put a bunch of these balls on, and then I got a lighter, and I tried to light it, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And I'm trying to get the paper. It's not going. I'm trying to get the stick. Nothing's happening. Nothing's catching fire. And my husband, Ken, came over and said, well, this is the problem. You don't have enough air. You don't have enough air in that mix for the fire to actually ignite, because a fire needs air to exist. I had built everything so tight that there was nowhere for air to get in and actually feed that fire. The same with those little newspaper balls. They were so tight that they didn't even want to catch fire because there was no air. And I just want you to know this when you're feeling guilty. Every good idea needs air and space to ignite. Every solution to every problem needs air for it to actually bloom and grow. We have to have margin. And so if you're feeling guilty, I can't make you not feel guilty, but I can share with you just how critical it is for us to all have downtime. You know, it's against international law to take a prisoner of war or a prisoner of any kind, and torture them by not allowing them to sleep. It's actually considered torture to not allow a prisoner to have downtime. We all need downtime. We need sleep. We need rest. When you think about the creation story in Genesis, and God takes 6 days to create the world and everything in it, including man, and then on the seventh day, what does the Bible say happened? God rested. God himself rested. If God rested, we can rest. He showed us how to do it. If resting is good enough for God, it's good enough for us. The word is actually translated from the original word, as he ceased. He stopped. We're allowed to stop. So if you start to feel guilty, I encourage you to actually say out loud to yourself, I'm allowed to stop. Because you are. And by stopping, by ceasing, by resting, you're going to create the space that those ideas and that creativity and all those solutions that you've been trying so hard to get, you'll create the space for them to ignite, to float up through your awareness, like my email address when I was getting my massage. Give yourself permission to make those margins in your life. And when you feel guilty about it, you can say, Shannon said, I have permission to have margin in my life, because we all do. You know how much you need. You know if you're getting it. You know what you value when it comes to downtime, taking a deep breath. I encourage you to take a look at that schedule that you've got. Make sure that everything on it aligns with what's important to you and what you value. And make sure that you put some downtime on there for yourself as well. Belief drives behavior. If you believe that having room, having rest, being able to stop for a little while is beneficial, then make your behavior align with that belief. Write it down on your calendar. Make a note. Give yourself time. Pick a day this week and say, I'm going to take some time for just me. Take a hot bath, drink some tea, go for a jog, whatever it is, create some margin. And you're going to be shocked at what happens when you give all that great idea and creativity that you've got bubbling up. You'll be amazed at what happens when you give it room. So that's it for tonight. That's your 3 hurdles to creating margin and how to address them. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. I'm so glad to have shared with you and glad you jumped on. Robert, I'm glad you're here. Franklin Nance, thank you for being here. To everybody else, I wish you a successful, wonderful week. I hope you thrive and change, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Don't forget, I'm going to post the link to the YouTube channel in the show notes or in the comments for this, so that if you want to go there and take a look at what's listed, it'll be an easier place for you to be able to find past content from Sunday Night Live. And if you'd be so kind as to follow, I think it's subscribe to that YouTube channel. It will allow me to name it something reasonable. So thank you. Thanks for the hearts, Carol. Thank you, everybody. And we will talk again soon. Bye.